Okay, Masechet Yoma Daf 70. We're talking about the Kohen Gadol who's reading the Sefer Torah. We said he reads first in Parashat in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 16, and then he rolls to chapter 23, and then he rolls it up and he says, "More than I have read here, there's also also more to say about Yom Kippur." And then he says by heart Sefer Bemidbar. Our question is, Bechol Kach Lama? Why does it give this whole speech? More than what I said here is also written. In order not to say anything negative, cast aspersion about the Torah scroll. Why isn't he reading the Pinchas from the scroll? Maybe it's missing in that Torah scroll. Maybe there's something wrong with the Sefer Torah. No. The scroll might have the full Sefer Torah. It has it in it. We just don't want to waste everybody's time. That's why I'm going to say it by heart. That's why he makes that little speech. Good. Remember, we said Sefer Bemidbar used to be called Chumash HaPekudim. He reads that by heart. Amai Higlol v'Nikre. Why does he have to read it by heart? So roll it and read it from there. Rav Huna bered Rav Yoshua Amar Rav Sheshat Lefi she'en golelin Sefer Torah b'tzibur mipnei kevod tzibur. We do not roll the Torah in public because of the respect of the community. We don't want people to wait. Torah tzibur, it's not nice to keep them waiting. We said yesterday, how long is that? Enough time that the Meturgeman is still going. So that was the amount of time. And now we're getting the reason for it. Okay, fine. Bring another Sefer Torah. Okay, it's in Bet HaMikdash after all. You know, they can get an extra Sefer. Rab Huna bar Yehuda Amar Mishum Pegamo Shel Rishon. No, because it'll cast aspersion on the first one. Oh, how come you brought a second one? There must be something wrong with the first one's pasul. Because you say when he says a beracha, open and closing, when you bring a new sefer Torah, you're going to say another beracha. So this is not beracha lebatala. Beracha batala is when something absolutely not needed. Beracha she'ena siricha is something that it's valid to say, but you could have found a way not to say the beracha. And so we don't want to make him say an extra beracha. Better just use one sefer Torah. Good. Hold on. Are you really worried about casting aspersions on the first Sefer Torah if you use the second one? We do this all the time. Maybe in Shalosh Torot, right? Because that's Chanukah and Rosh Chodesh. If on Shabbat, it happens now, every so often. And you bring three. I mean, you could have brought an example of two, which we have all the time, but you wanted to bring even a better example. You have three. We don't worry about that. We read one in Parashat HaShavua, one for Rosh Chodesh, and then for Chanukah, we do it in that order. So what about that? How come you don't say cast aspersions? The answer is Telata Gabre Betzlata Sifre Leka Pegama. Had Gabre Betre Sifre Ika Pegama. Three different people and three different Sefarim. No one's going to say anything. Three different people. Each one they're using their own sefer. That's totally fine. But here the Kohen Gadol does everything. He gets all the aliyot, right? And so people are going to say the same Kohen. Now he's using a different one in person. So that's why you would not. Okay, which is interesting. Might apply if you're giving someone for some reason two aliyot, back to back in two different sefarim. You should not do that. Good. Now he says the berachot umbarech aleha shemoneh. Berachot. We mentioned in the Mishnah, it says 8 berachot, and we listed them. Remember, we said there were actually 9. Anyway, here we have a Baraita that's going to review them. So just the same way in Bet Knesset, we say Asher Bacharbanu Noten HaTorah. That's the same thing. Al Habodah, Al Haodah. That's something like Peseh, Modim, Mechilat Ha'avon, Kitikna, and something about the forgiveness. As we know, as has been established. And then other ones seem to be special for this occasion. Al Mikdash b'fnei asman, Kohanim b'fnei asman, Yisrael b'fnei asman. But for the Bet HaMikdash, for the Kohanim for Israel, meaning God chose each of these things. Aval Shara Tefillah, and then Shomea Tefillah. You see what's missing in this list? Yerushalayim. But this list has 8. So this seems to be the actual 8. Good. Now, Tanur Banan, another Braita. Ushara Tefillah. But this last beracha, that's for the rest of the tefillah. What's the text? Here it is. Rina techina bakasha ulefanecha alamecha Yisrael shesirichin lehiv basheya. And we give song and supplication, petition before you, for the people of Israel who need to be saved. Beautiful beracha. Bechotem b'shomea tefillah. אחר כך כל אחד ואחד מביא ספר תורה מביתו וקורא בו כדי להראות חזותו לרבים. After that, everybody goes and brings their own ספרי Torah, and they want to show how beautiful this was made out of wood, made out of silver, and show off the beauty of this Sifrei Torah, and everybody reads the Torah from their own. What a beautiful minhag! It's like Simchat Torah. Okay, we went from having only one Sefer Torah, and we have to skip around, and then everybody brings them and reads them together. They have a little study session. So it's very nice. Okay, Kohen Gadol, and so that there's two things going on simultaneously: the Kohen Gadol reading the Torah and the burning of the rest of the carcass of the Pad and Sa'id outside, and they're far away from each other. So even if you do the first half of one, there's no way to get to the other one before it's done. Pishita, so this is obvious. Why would you think that the Mishnah says, not because it's not allowed, just practically you can't get there. Now, why would anyone think that it wouldn't be allowed to visit two things? Resh Lakish says you can't pass over a mitzvah. In other words, if you're there performing a mitzvah, you can't leave. If you're listening to Sefer Torah, you're not allowed to leave and go to the other one. So you might have thought that's true. So now we enter. Even if it's another mitzvah, right? You can't leave this one. So you might have thought that. And by the way, what's the mitzvah? He's not actually reading it. He's just participating. He's just listening. My mitzvah, but to do either the reading of the Sefer Torah or the burning of the sacrifice. That's to have a lot of people there. That gives glory to the king. So your being there is a mitzvah. So Kamash Malan. So we might have thought that you're not allowed to leave one, go to the other. So this now teaches that you are allowed. Because you're leaving one to go to a mitzvah, another one, you would be allowed. The problem is you're not going to make it in time. So don't bother. Okay, so this is, in Halakha L'Maaseh, nowadays, you're not allowed to leave the Beit Knesset during an Aliyah, right? So, sometimes you come visit, you want to see someone, whatever, you got to stay in the room until the Aliyah ends, and that would be a fulfillment of Resh Lakish. All right, so that ends that Mishnah. And now the next one. Im bebigdei bus kore, kidesh yadav raglav, pashat yadav v'tabal alav v'nistapag, v'hebiu lo bigdei zahav v'lavash v'kidesh yadav v'raglav. Okay, so remember the reading of the Torah, he could do in his own clothing, or he could continue in the white clothing. If he continued in his white clothing, then kidesh yadav, then he has to change out. So when he changes, first he rinses his hands, then he does the tevilah, and then he rinses his hands and feet again. So this would be now the third time he's going to the mikveh. He did once in the morning before he put on but then he puts on the gold. Then he gets again before the white, and now he's taking off the white and putting on the gold. Okay. Every time he changes. So now we're up to the third stage. Now, if he was wearing a robe, he would have washed his hands and feet when he took off his golden clothing, right? And then put on the robe, and then after that he would just skip to the immersion and then putting on the new clothing and wash his hands and feet. Okay, so now we're ready for the golden clothing. So in other words, we're back to the regular services, which was going to focus on Musafin. ועשה את אלו ואת אל העם ואת שבעת כבשים תמימים בני שנה דברי רבי אליעזר. So let's explain this. He's going to do the two elim. What are the two elim? On the screen, I'm going to show the psukim, but you could follow if you want here. So he brings Bezot Yavo, pasuk 3, says Bezot Yavo Aron HaKodesh befar ben bakar lechatat ve'ayil le'olah. So said, right, he brings one ayil for himself, and then pasuk 5 he says Umet adat bnei Israel ayil echad le'olah. So he's going to bring two elim, one for himself and one for everyone else, and they're both le'olah. So that's the elim that we're talking about. This ayil in Parashat Pinchas also mentions one ayil. So we're going to see there's a machloket. Is that the same as the one mentioned here for the community, or is it another one? And there's really three elim altogether. Most of the opinions say this is the one overlap between the two parashiyot, and so he's going to bring. Now we're bringing that. Okay, good. And also shibat kibasim temimim b'nei shana. This is mentioned in Parashat Pinchas. Okay, so you see, this is the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. According to Rabbi Eliezer, basically, you're doing all the avodat of Yom Kippur that's mentioned in Acharemot, And then you're going to do the Musaf things, everything mentioned in Parashat Pinachas. The rabbis are trying to figure out what's the relationship between these two parashiyot. Right? Except for the one ayah, there's no overlap. So do you do all this one first and that one first? That would be Eliezer, or maybe you mix. Maybe you do part of it here, part of it there. Right? It doesn't. The Torah doesn't tell you anything, so it's hard to figure that out. Okay, so that's the first opinion. Now, Rabbi Akiva Omer, Im Tamid Shel Shachar Hayu Kerebin. He says the 7 kibasim, which are for the Musaf, you don't do it here at the third, after the third immersion. You do it in the morning after the first immersion with the Korban Tamid Shel Shachar. So this is going to be the main difference between them. So keep this in mind. It's going to be pre-avodah, right? You're doing part of the Musaf pre-avodah. That's correct. We do Musaf. What do you mean now? In the middle of Musaf, we mentioned, right? That's when we do it in the middle of Musaf, right? That's true. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of moving parts here and a lot of opinions. If you just remember this one point, everything, this is the main thing that they argue on. The 7 kibasim, is it done in the afternoon? That's to be Eliezer. Actually, right now he says at the third stage. And Rabbi Akiva says the first one in the morning. Okay, besides that, also there's Fad Ha'olah, Sa'ir HaNasa Bachutz, Hayu Kerebin, Aim Tamid Shel Ben Ha'arbaim. Those are also mentioned in Parashat Pinachas, and so they're part of Musaf. That part of Musaf is done in the afternoon. Im Tamid Shel Ben Ha'arbaim means during Mincha. That's the 5th, after the 5th immersion, not even the 3rd. So he's spreading it out, part here, part over there. Okay, now if you look here, you see the list that Rabbi Akiva just said. He says, Im Tamid Shel Shachar Hayu Kerebin. That's referring to the 7. And then he mentions Pad Ha'olah and Sa'ir Nachal Bachnus. If you read this straight through, it sounds like Pad Ha'olah and Sa'ir are both done with the Ben Ha'arbaim offering. The Gemara is going to ask, though, this Pad Ha'olah, really you can put a comma afterwards and read Im Tamid Shel Shachar Hayu Kerebin Upad Ha'olah, comma. And that would mean Pad Ha'olah goes in the morning. That's not a natural way of reading the Mishnah. It really doesn't fit the context. So it's not really, I don't think the Mishnah means that. Why is the Gemara even suggesting that? I'm going to show you is to reconcile the Mishnah with the Tosefta. That does say the Pad Ha'olah is in the morning. Okay, so I'm just showing it to you here so that you'll be ready for when we see it in a minute. And then, Kidesh Yadav Raglav Ufashat. And now this is his 4th changing, 4th mikveh. Puts back on the white clothing. And so he's going in just to take out the incense that he put there in the morning. This is interesting because if you read the chat, just read Acharei Mot. He only changes twice. He starts with gold, does white, does the whole avodah, and goes back to gold. That's it. Right? And for some reason, we're introducing a whole extra step, two more changings, just to remove it. Right? Why couldn't he remove it before? Maybe they wanted to, maybe had to finish smoking until it finished, whatever reason. Okay. Now, hevi udo lo bigdei zahav. Okay, so the last changing back into gold, and he does the afternoon Korban Tamid, and to finish off, the truth is that they already prepared. The tiv here might mean to actually light them. This is when he's lighting the nerot. So now he's finished, right? He's finished for the day, so he's gonna wash his hands and feet before he removes his clothing. The next words, don't belong here. He doesn't need another one. Okay, so this is found in printed editions, but it should be erased. It's not in manuscripts. It is not. It seems like you see the scribe. He's just writing it. He's writing the whole phrase because he wrote it so many times before. And the light could be daytime, yeah. And no, because Korban Tamid, yeah, you have to do Korban Tamid. It has to be in the gold. That's a regular daily obligation. Heavy ulo big day small belabash. And everything bring back his own clothing. Umelavino toad beto. V'yom tov haya oseda haba b'shashi yasa b'shalom min hakodesh. Right, and now all his friends come and they make a celebration because He is successful. He didn't miss anything. He didn't die. He did everything properly. So that's a wonderful time to celebrate. All right, good. Now Gemara is going to ask a series of 3 questions, and then we'll answer them. That line of Rabbi Akiva, what did he mean when he said about the pod? Im tamid shel shachar hayu kerevin, upad ha'olah v'seir ha'nasa b'chutz im tamid shel ha'arba'im. Is the pod go on with the right? When he says and the pod and Sayyid, that's the quote from the Mishnah. And so is it just like that? Or is the pod going on what came before, and the pod is also in the morning? I think the first reading is the one that makes sense, that the pod is in the afternoon. But okay, I guess you could put a comma after the pod ha'olah and make that in the morning. And then in that case, only the Sayyid and Nasa B'chutz im tamid shel ben ha'arba'im. The third Sayyid, remember there's 2 Sayyidim, the pairs, Hashem and Azazel, but there's another Sayyid that's mentioned in Pinachas, and that would have been done in the afternoon. That's question number 1. Does the pod go in the morning or the afternoon? Pod ha'olah. 2, pod ha'olah, the Rabbi Eliezer, the Shayreh. Emat abid le, Rabbi Eliezer, the first opinion didn't mention the pod. I know he said the kivasim are done in the afternoon, but should we assume the pod also? Maybe not. I don't know. He didn't say anything about it at all. 2, and the Rabbi Eliezer, ben Rabbi Akiva, emoreh hatat, emat abid lehu. Questions on both of them. The innards of the 2 chatat, the pod and the sayyid. Remember, he took them out and put them in a bowl, and we said he doesn't do it yet because he's supposed to read the Sefer Torah. Okay, so when does he do it? Mishnah didn't mention it at all. So when does that happen? Right now, with the mincha, right before, after, doesn't say. So the Mishnah, you see, is missing some steps. So we have Amad Ava comes to the rescue. La mashkachat la mitakanta ela or the Rabbi Eliezer the Tanad b'diber Shemuel or the Rabbi Akiva kidet Tosefta. He says you don't have a full list in the Mishnah. Want a full list? I'll give you 2 sources. One is if you want a list for the Rabbi Eliezer, then you have to look at the Braita from the school of Shemuel. And if you want to learn about Rabbi Akiva, you have to look at the Tosefta. Tosefta is in the school of Rabbi Akiva. All right, good. So now we're going to quote both of them. So now we have separate sources. These sources, not everything in them is consistent with the Mishnah that we just mentioned. So, all right. So there's, maybe you can reconcile them, but anyway. The Taneh de Be'er Shemuel. The Rabbi Eliezer Omer. Yasa ve'asa elo be'el ha'am. So after he finishes the Yom Kippur service, he goes out, and then he's going to do the 2 elim that are mentioned in Acharemot, and this is where he does the burning of the innards of the pod and sa'ir, the pair. The aval pod ha'olah v'shivat kebasim v'sa'ir anasa b'chutz im tamid shel ben ha'arba'im. Okay, pod ha'olah you asked about? Yeah, that's later. The 7 kebasim, that's also later. This contradicts the Mishnah. Mishnah said this after the 3rd one. Here he says it's after the 5th one. All right. Either way, the point is that is not in the morning. It's after the avodah. Rabbi Akiva, the Tosefta, Mahi was the Tosefta. The Tanya, Rabbi Akiva Omer, Ad Haolah, Shivat Kebasim, Im Tamid Shel Shachar Hayu Kerebin. So those are all musaf things that are done in the morning. Remember the Pad Haolah? That was the middle word. So he put the comma after. It's supposed to go before. See, that's why I think they're reading the Mishnah out, not according to the regular normal syntax. Shene'emad. Why does Rabbi Akiva put the kivasim in the morning? Shene'emad midlebad olat haboker asher leolat tamid. Regarding now, this pasuk is regarding Pesach, so it has nothing to do with this. But the point is that talking about musafin. And it says these musafin should be done besides the morning olah. That teaches you in general, there's a close connection between musaf offerings and the morning olah. And therefore, on Yom Kippur also, at least some of the musaf should be done with the morning. And that's why he puts the 7 kevasim and the pod in the morning. And then you do v'achar kach avodat hayom. Good. V'achar kach sa'ir anasa b'chutz. And then the sa'ir that's outside Shene'emar, Sa'ir azim echad chatat min le'ebad chatat kippurim. That's said in Bimidbar. That is on about Yom Kippur. And it says you do the third Sa'id, which is a Chatat, besides the other Chataot. So since it puts it back to back, you want to put them together. So it's saying besides the other Chatat. That means it has to be after the Chatat. After the that's later, right? So in the Yom Kippur Avodah, you did the Sa'id and the Par, that's Chatat. So this should be right after it. So you see that it's conceptual. I mean, the rabbis, in part they're trying to reconstruct history, but in part there's a lot of sources that know. So I think they're actually, thinking conceptually what makes sense, that thematically they should go together. After that, then you do the two Elim, which are mentioned in Acharemot. You see, according to the Akiva, you're going back and forth. You do some Olah, then Yom Kippur, then some Musaf, then Yom Kippur, then some Musaf. You keep going back and forth because, right, the Pesukim are telling you, do the Chatot together. Do the, right, Musaf and Shacharit have something in common. You have to do those together. So then you do that. The innards of the Pad and Sa'ir, now you burn them and put them on the Mizbeach. After that, all together, it's Ben Habayim. He doesn't say actually when he puts on the last clothing, so it's got to be somewhere in between there, probably right before Tamid Shel Ben Habayim. Good. So that's all the Akiva. Now we're going to ask for the sources. How come the Eliezer does that? Abed Kedichtiv. He's following the order of the Pesukim. Abed Bedesha de Torat Kohanim. Adad Abed de Chumash Pikudim. The original name for Sefer Vayikra was Torat Kohanim. Right? We call it Leviticus, meaning Leviim. So the English name is based on the Greek name. Closer, at least closer to the original. Torat Kohanim, that comes first. So you do everything in Acharemot. You've done that, good. Now you do all the Musafin after. You keep them separate. So that makes a lot of sense. Rabbi Akiva, I told you the reason already. That's the pasuk regarding Korban Pesach, but it does say that Musaf, some of the Musaf at least, should be with the morning. Alma Musafin, you do some of the Musaf with the morning. Okay, Rabbi Eliezer, it's a good pasuk. Rabbi Eliezer, what are you going to do with that pasuk? He says, I'm going to learn from that regarding the Se'irim, whatever this one does atones for, the other one also will atone for. The Se'irim atone for Tum'ah in the Bet HaMikdash. The other one, the third one, also does the same thing for other variants of Tum'ah in the Bet HaMikdash. He doesn't. You could. He's not learning from Musa. He's not using that. He doesn't need this to learn that Musafin are done in the morning. Musafin are not in the morning. It's just that he's learning about kapara. They do similar kapara things. That's all. The Sayyid is a Musaf, right? That Sayyid Musaf is similar. Yeah. So you do end up putting them together, but that's but he's not using it for what Rabbanan use it for. Okay, good. Now, to make it more confusing, so far we have two opinions about the 7 kibasim. Right? Rabbi Eliezer says in the afternoon, sometime in the afternoon, the 3rd or 5th. Rabbi Akiva says in the morning. Okay, now maybe within Rabbi Akiva, we have 2 more opinions. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Mishemo in the name of Rabbi Akiva. Echad karev im tamid shachar. Take the 7, do 1 in the morning, v'shisha im tamid shel ban habayim, and 6 in the afternoon. Remember, this reminds me of the menorah. You do 2 and 5. 5 and 2. Okay, 1 and 6. Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon Omer Bishmo. He also says in the name of Rabbi Akiva, Shisha kerevin im tamid shachar ve'echad im tamid shel ben harbayim. No, the other way around. You do 6 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. In other words, they're interpreting Rabbi Akiva to say you do some musafin in the morning. You don't have to do all of them, right? Leave some over after. Why? My time Rabbanan. There's 2 pesukim. Ketiv milebad olat haboker uchtiv ve'asa et olato. Hilkach abed minayhu hacha uminayhu hacha. There's 2 pesukim. One suggests the morning and one suggests the afternoon. How so? The one is the one is actually about Pesach that says besides the olat tamid of the morning, and that's regarding Musaf. So something has to be in the afternoon. The other one it seems to be talking about the ayil. You do the olato, and that is mentioned after, and that's a musaf. So some musafin are after. So too the kibasim which are musaf should be done after. In other words, splitting the difference. We really, Rabbi Akiva has a point, Rabbi Eliezer has a point too. So do some before and some after. Rabbi Akiva is not totally disagreeing with Rabbi Eliezer. He just says, yeah, you're right. I'll do some in the afternoon, but I got to do some in the morning. Okay, now, what's the difference between these two opinions, 1 and 6 or 6 and 1? Rabbi Yehuda Savar, Abed Had. Says, I'm going to do one first. Fine, because after all says you have to do something in the morning. Behadar Abed Abodat Hayom. Dil Machusha Halesh Kohen Gadol. But I'm going to do one in the morning. I'm going to do 6 in the afternoon. You know why? Because he has to do Abodat Yom Kippurim. That's the main event. And we don't want him to get all tired out by doing all 6 in the morning. And just do one because you have to do something. But focus your energy on Yom Kippur. But then you'll leave it till after. Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Shimon savar kivan datchil abed shisha dima pasha del gabe avodat hayom zarizu. No. Do the 6 now while he still has energy. Because if you leave it till after, by the afternoon he's going to be really tired. So don't worry about avodat hayom. Avodat hayom is the main thing. He'll be diligent. He's not going to fall asleep, right? So in other words, do the thing that he might be less diligent about first. Get that out of the way. You know he did it, and then he's sure to concentrate for Yom Kippur. I think the logic would be you have to do something, but since, according to this, do as much as you can, get out of the way before, and just leave what you need to after, right? The opposite, or vice versa, yeah, that you want to do as little as possible now because you might get tired out. Do as much as possible later. Good. Anyway, the kula al mamihat had ayelhu kiman kidabi. Both opinions here think that there's only one ayil. Remember I said ayil is the one that's mentioned in both acharemot. There's an ayil for the am, and in Pinachas there's an ayil that's a musaf. And so all the opinions here so far said they're both the same ayils, only one ayil. There's two elim, but there's only one ayil for the sibur. Kiman kidabi Betanya Rabbi Omer ayil echad ha'amur kan hu ha'amur bechumash pekudim. It's the same one mentioned here in Acharemot is also mentioned pekudim, referring to the same thing. Rabbi Shimon Omer shnei elim hen echad amur kan echad amur bechumash pekudim. No, there's two. Even though they look the same, you have to actually bring 2 separate animals to fulfill both of these opinions. Good. My ta'ama did it be? Why does it be says only one? Dichtib ehad. In both contexts, actually says ayil ehad. So twice you have it. So therefore, saying one only. Oh, how many? 2? No, 1. Right? Well, maybe you mean 2. No, I'm saying really 1. Okay. Rabbi Elazar b'Shimon, my Rabbi Shimon who says 2. My ehad miyuchad shebe'ezro. When it says 1, he says 1 means a unique one. Get the best ayil for this, right? Get a special one. That's why it says 1, but it really means 2. Where to be? So to be, where are you going to learn this halacha? Don't you agree that you should bring the best? Yeah. In Devarim, it says you should bring your choicest animal when you make a neder. A neder means it's a voluntary offering. So he says, I learned it from there that all korbanot, you should always bring the best. Okay, Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon. Okay, look, Rabbi Shimon, what do you do with that pasuk? It says, Had bechova, echad bin dava, usrichi. You're right, I agree. But that pasuk is only talking about voluntary offerings. If I only had that pasuk, I might have thought, voluntary offering, you got to bring your best because you decided to bring it. So bring, but maybe an obligatory offering, you're allowed to bring standard. No, that's why I need echad to teach me that I need that also. And if it only echad, I would think, okay, maybe it's obligation, I have to bring the best. A voluntary, I can bring whatever I want. No, Devarim says you need both. And so according to the Elazar, that's what he does with Pasukim Devarim. According to the B, he says, I can learn from Devarim that all korbanot have to be the best, and therefore echad means you only bring 1. Rabbi.